Hello, this is my tutorial on the Lola Domed Handbag by Swoon. This is one I've made previously. I used connectors for it instead of the pattern which shows just to add the straps to the bag. I do like to use hardware because I think it adds something to the bag. And also I'm doing zipper tabs on the ends because if you're using a continuous zip and you fold out like the pattern says, the zip opens up. I had to buy a metal stop because I haven't made one for ages, and I completely forgot that I add zipper tabs to the ends because the pattern doesn't say to either. So unless you're using a zip that has a metal stop or a stop on the end, you'd either have to buy a stop for it like I have, or continue the zip, or do what I'm doing and add the zipper tabs, which I'm going to show you how to do. I also like that it hides this hole. I don't really like having the hole. Call me fussy, but I just don't think it looks very good. So much so that I'm a bit fussy, and I'm not going to sell this bag. I'm giving it to my daughter because I'm quite fussy about the bags I sell, and I don't like it. So that's why I'm doing the zipper tabs. So that's it really. This was made in wool, but I'm going to do one in cotton today because I realise that probably most people might not use wool, and if you do it, it's fine. I love using wool, but yeah, I'm going to do it in cotton with vinyl accents. So put that bag aside and talk about the pattern pieces. Now I do apologise because in all the tutorials I've done so far, and I think this is my 9th one, I've never discussed the pattern pieces because I just didn't think to. I wrongly assumed that everyone would understand how to put a pattern together because I've been sewing for like, don't say really, but 46 years. And so because it's so second nature to me, I just wasn't thinking until a lady in my group had problems putting a pattern together for a different bag. Excuse me. And I realised, and I thought, oh goodness, I've been letting people down a bit with that. So I'm going to discuss the patterns. Now I laminate my patterns because they're reusable when you laminate them, hard wearing, and they're very easy to draw around, cut around, etc. So what I do is if there's when it says there's a fold, like you print the pattern piece off and this said fold, so you cut it on the fold of the material. Well, I don't like to do that because it's never quite perfect. It can be hit and miss on that fold. So I print 2 pieces off and I do one in the reverse and stick them together. And then I use an A3 laminator and I laminate them. Now, if I used a pattern that was too big once put, say if this was longer than an A3, I'd laminate them separately, and then I use medical tape to stick the pieces together, and it works perfectly. So that's laminating them. So, as I said, I print 2 off and stick them together. So with this one, I've printed. This is the main body. I've cut the holes out for where it says to add the connectors and the zipper facing, or the pocket trim should I say, sorry. And the same with the bottom support. I've printed 2 off, stuck together, and the bottom panel, then the pocket trim and the back handle straps. Now with the 3 pieces, these you don't add extra pieces to. I just printed 2 of and stuck them together. But these 3 pieces have extra pieces, so you've got 2 pieces that you stick together to make the pattern, and they have A on them, and you join them at A and A, and then you've got C and C and B, and which you can't see the B and B, are there? The B and B. So you join them with the letters, so it's quite self-explanatory really. It's quite easy. So you glue them together, and I then stuck the reverse again, and that's what I do with all my patterns. Every single pattern I laminate them. I have an A3 printer that does up to 250 microns, which is the thickness of the laminate paper. I suppose you could use the laminate sheets. And I buy 125 micron sheets, which means that the two together equals 250. So I get the strongest I can for my machine, and away I go. And then I have A3 folders that I store them in alphabetically. So that's my pattern pieces, and that's what I do. I'm just picking up a piece I dropped. And now we have the pattern pieces all cut out, and I've got my external pieces here, and I'm doing different handles to the handles on the pattern. So if you want to do the handles to the pattern, by all means follow the pattern for that. This is the size of the handles you'd have. You'd cut them out of vinyl or leather or cork with this, and you'd do 4 of them, where you'd stick 2 wrong sides together, and then you sew around the edges. Quite easy. But I'm doing the handles that are devised by Lockwood and Webb Designs, and I just love doing them this way. So I have 2 pieces of my external fabric for them, and I have the same length in vinyl. I have 20-inch by 2-inch pieces. So 2 20-inch by 2-inch vinyl and 2 20-inch by 2-inch external fabric, whatever it is, whether it's vinyl, cotton, cork, etc. I've got my zipper tabs, and I did, I believe, 3 inches by 2 inches. And then I've got my main panel pieces. These are my external panel pieces, and I have used foam. Now it does tell you to use something like a heat and bond light or Wonder Under to fuse the foam to the fabric. I never fuse anything to fabric, because when you're turning a bag right side out, birthing it as they say, it can really cause wrinkles on the fabric. Then when you try and iron it, it gets worse. I've lost bags because of that in the early days. So I no longer do that. I buy double fusible foam, only because it's the only one I can get. And what I do is I use cheap polycotton that I iron both sides to, so it's not going to stick to anything. Then I've cut the shape of the foam out on the pattern piece they gave us, and I used my woven interfacing piece to hold it down. I've ironed around the edges, and that's firmly anchored in place. That's not going anywhere. And that's how I do it. Like, so there's nothing that's stuck to this. You see, it's all loose, and that's how I want it. It works brilliantly doing it this way. If you want to fuse yours, by all means do. I don't. Then we've got the lining pieces, and we have the bottom panel lining, and then 2 pieces of the side panels. I've added my interfacing, my woven interfacing onto the backs. And then I've got my pocket pieces. That's the slip pocket piece. And they do say to use 2 pieces 8 by 7. And then you sew them together. Well, I don't like having a seam along the top edge of a slip pocket. So I've done 8 by 14 inches. So that it will have a folded edge instead of a seamed edge. So I personally prefer it that way. Then the external, I have my bottom panel piece and the pocket trim. You may notice there isn't a pocket on the outside of this one. That's because I don't like adding pockets to wool because it just doesn't look right. So I added mine inside. And then I've got the piece of Peltex for the bottom that it tells you to use. And I've also got a piece of foam prepared that, again, I've added the polycotton to. I add this in addition. They don't say to, but I add it to the bottom of my bag. I just like the padded effect that it gives you. And then the hardware. I've got my metal connectors that I'm using. I got these from eBay, a lady on eBay in the UK. I've got my handmade label. I've got my label tag that I put inside my bag, and I'm adding 5 feet extra to the pan, which I will show you how to do. And then finally I've got my zips. I've got my 5-inch zip. I've done a 6-inch zip, but I've got my small zip for my pocket and my large zip for the end, which is a 12-inch zip, which I'll be, it's not quite, it's like just over 12 inches, so I'll be trimming that up in a bit to add to the zipper tabs. So that's it. That's all our pocket, that's all our pattern pieces. So I shall come back with the start of the sew along. In the tutorial, the first part that you have to do is to, they say to zigzag stitch around the edge of the foam and then attach it to your panel piece using the web fuse such as Heat and Bond Light or Wonder Under. As I explained previously, I haven't done that. I didn't stitch around the edge. I've done it in the past and I just find it leaves a very hard edge that you can actually feel through the bag. I don't like it. So I leave it as it is and I just fuse the woven interfacing over the top. So if you want to do that, by all means do. But either way, you need either of them to be done to start the next one, which is section 2 on the zippered pocket. So you need one panel piece, your pocket trim and your zip for this. You will also need your pocket piece, which is, it measures, I believe, yeah, 9, is that 9 or 9.5? Yeah, 9 by 7 inches. I've just got a trim that's coming off. Yeah, 9 by 7 inches. So that's what you need for your pocket. We need to make the markings for where it needs to go. So you get your pattern piece and cut the hole out. Place it on your pattern piece and draw a line around the edges. Like so. So there's my box drawn. Now it tells you to then cut it out, ready to put this on top. I never do that because it can be really awkward trying to get the right place for it to be. So before I cut it, I attach this. Now what I want to do is mark centrally so I can see where this has to go. So this is just under 1 inch deep, so just under 1/2 inch I draw a line along the center. And so that I can see which end to go, how far each side to go. 3/4 of an inch in, I draw a vertical line. So I hope you can see it, because it's a white pen. I don't know if you'll see it properly or not, but that's what I end up with. And then I get my trusty double-sided tape, and put it along the outer edge. Like so. And then using these markings as a guide for where to place it, you want to make sure that you lay it down so they're centrally in it. Can you see what I mean? So I'm happy with the placement of this. By the way, if you're wondering what this is, it's 50 glorious meters of double-sided tape, very thin, that I got from my lady at oh, I can never remember the name of it fully. Glitzy bag, no, I'll have to come back on that one. Anyway, I get it from a lady called Anne, and this is called Style Fix. It's German, and it was £8.50 for this. I mean, it's a bargain for the amount on here. It's nice and narrow. The other one I get from wherever I get, eBay, Amazon, I can't remember. It's nice, it's the same thing almost, but it's a bit wider, so it depends on what I'm doing as to which I use. They're both washable and sewable. This product that I've been using, the original one that I bought, which was Sticks 2, it was good and it didn't gum up my needle. However, I couldn't get this, so I bought a different brand. And that's a mistake, because this is really for crafts rather than sewing, and it gums my needle up terribly, so I don't use it for anywhere that I'm going to sew along like this. I tend to use it on parts that I don't need to sew. So it has its use, and it's much cheaper, you see, but for sewing along I use these, and I love having the thin one, so I will get this again. So yeah, I shall put the name of Anne's Facebook group up so that you can see. If you live abroad, she sends abroad, so you can buy from wherever. So I will put her group name up, and I will give a link on the YouTube page to her group. I buy most of my hardware from her as well. I didn't buy the connectors, but I do buy most of my hardware from Anne. Because she does amazing prices. So wherever you are in the world, even with the postage, it can be very good to get from Anne. I have quite a few American friends that buy from her. Anyway, that's enough of endorsing. But I know people will say to me, where'd you get that from? Where'd you get that from? I always get asked. So I thought it's better just to save being asked all the time. So now we want to sew, and we're going to sew all the way around the outside edge only. Leave a long top thread. Rather than back stitching, we're going to push the thread through afterwards. It looks nicer. So I've sewn all the way around the outside, and I've got my 2 threads hanging. Rather than back stitching, which doesn't look very pretty, I get a sewing needle, and it is worth doing this, I promise. And I have to thread them through, so I want to make sure they're the same length. I have the tiniest eye. There. And then go in one of the stitch holes through to the back, so that that's where I've gone in, but it looks very neat, doesn't it? And then you just want to tie off. You can sew it off as well, you can stitch it in, but I just do this, which is fine, works fine. And this is a stronger tie off than it is with the machine doing it, so it is worth doing. So that's that. Put my needle away before I can't find it. And now we can cut this centre out. And I need to get my scissors. I paused and went and looked for them because of the rummaging noise, would be annoying for you. So I've got my scissors. These are my applique scissors that I use for my embroidery because they've got a bend. These are Ginger double curve scissors. I love them. So I'm just going to cut away the foam first, rather than trying to do everything in one go and not doing it very neatly maybe. So you cut away. Don't go too close to the edge because you don't want to cut into the stitching by accident. So that's the foam cut away. So it's probably about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then cut the fabric away. Well, you can do 2 together if you want to, but I prefer to do it this way. There we go. Just going to trim this a bit more. There. So that's all cut away, and that was much easier to put on than if I'd cut the hole out. So that's my preferred way of doing it anyway. Okay, so the next bit is to get your zip. There. And I like to put some double-sided tape along each edge. Gosh, it's a warm day today. It's a nice hot summer's day. And it's the 1st of June. So making sure your zipper pulls this end and not that end. Pull the tape backing off. If you can. I was about to say this is such a nice easy one to pull off. Okay, so that the zipper pull doesn't get stuck to everything, which it tends to do. I'm going to place this over and down. So that's my zipper placed down. And now we stitch around the inside of the box, or the box in the middle. Sorry about that, I had to pause it because I had a knock at the door. And then rather than using your machine to cut the thread, pull it out so you've got some excess. And, oh goodness, just cut it at the machine like so. So that's the stitching all the way around, and as before I used the long thread and pushed it through with the needle and tied it off. Now we get our zipper pocket piece, and I've removed the double-sided tape off of the zip here because we now need to attach it using that piece of the zip. I don't normally do it this way. I've done it this way because the pattern suggests to do it this way. I'm already regretting it. But I thought I'd show you their way in case you want to do it their way. So about half an inch down from the top edge, I'm laying my double-sided tape. And peel the backing off. You actually may, do you know what, I'm going to find it easier to do it along the zipper tape. So yeah, put it along the top edge of your zipper tape. It will be easier, trust me. And then peel the backing off if you can. And then just going to fold this over by about 3/8 of an inch and lay it along the edge like so. So you've got an overhang like that, and then stitch along as close to the edge as you can. Probably using a zipper foot is best. Doing the same as before, start with a long thread on the top. me quite a job to move the zipper pull out of the way when you're using a walking foot. It's not very kind. But I'll get there in the end. Oh, hiccups. And again, pull and cut your thread. So that's the top of it attached, and then you want to move it up, and as before I'm going to remove the double-sided tape that I placed along here, which is nice and easy to do, it's not a problem. And place my double-sided tape along the bottom here. And then just go over and then again stitch along the bottom. That's pushing the zip out of the way, so the foot out of the way. So open that up for now. That back out of the way. I'm not sure you will have seen any of that, so I do apologise if you didn't. Move the zipper pull out of the way. Oh, it's a fiddly one. So we've stitched along there as well, and now having the panel the right way up, you want to stitch down the sides, making sure that it's not that way, it needs to be this way. So there you have your pocket made, and that's the first part of the sew along done. It's this point that I like to add my handmade label to the outside of the bag. So what I like to do is about 1.5 inches down from the pocket, I like to mark the centre point as 6.5 inches long, so at 3.25 inch I mark the line, and then I get the washer and place the marks. And then moving the zipper pocket out of the way, I just cut the lines in it. And what I like to do as well is add some fray check, or this is fray block by June Taylor. And I just add some, it's to stop it ever fraying. Use the iron to dry it off a bit. It's just so that they never fray. And then put it in the holes, turn it over, and once I've done that, I like to get some Peltex. I just keep offcuts of it handy for this very purpose, just so that you don't feel it through the pocket or anything. So rather than iron it down, because I don't think it really holds that well over the metal, I glue it. I'm sorry if you've got that noise, that you're picking up that noise. They're out there cutting trees back, so it's very noisy, but I've got the windows open, which doesn't help. It's a beautiful day. So that's good, that's that done. So we can leave that to dry whilst we go on to the next part, which is the handles, section 3. Ordinarily, you'll have cut your handles, if you're doing it their way, you'll have cut your vinyl handles with this template, and then you'd get the main panel template, you'd mark the handle placement, and then you get the handle that you've made, which, as I said earlier, you get 2 pieces of vinyl, wrong sides together, glue, well not glue because the vinyl burns, well, I call it burns, the I use double-sided tape and then stitch around the outer edge to stitch them together, and then that's the handles made. And then you literally place them where the markings are and stitch around there. I don't like doing that. I like to use some hardware, because I just think it really lifts the design, just makes it look nicer. So on to the way I do the handles, which I've done in other tutorials, and I use the same method for straps as well. And this is the method that Lockwood and Webb Designs have devised, and I give them credit every single time because they kindly gave me permission to show you their method, and credit where it's due. And this is such an amazing way to do handles. I used to buy the end straps such as these and these. I mean, I've still got some, but I've not had to use them because of the way this is. I mean, I'm literally going to have to do handles the old-fashioned way at some point, just to use them up. Oops, a bit wonky there. Okay, so I've just marked lines centrally down the middle whilst I've been gabbing away to you. I could talk the hind legs off a donkey. And do it on all 4 strap pieces. And before I go any further with anything else, I need to get one each of the pieces, so one vinyl and one external fabric, and place them right sides together diagonally like so. And get my pen and ruler, and I just want to mark where that corner is and go from this top corner to that corner to see where I'm going to stitch, and then I'm going to stitch across from there to there. And then open them up, fold the seam allowance, I don't know what really you call it, fold them over at the back anyway, and then top stitch. And top stitch both sides. So we've top stitched both sides, and now we cut off the seam allowance at the back. Like so. And now we get our double-sided tape. And I can use the red one here because I'm not going to be stitching where I'm putting the tape. And about 3 inches down from the end, put the tape. You need to leave it away from the end there. and then stop before the end, about 3 inches, and do both sides of the line. Just coming to the end of the tape. I knew that was going to happen. It's always very stuck to the plastic as well. Goodness me. Whew. That was hard work. And they've always got a blue tape on there. And then continue. Just like to make sure it's pressed down. And then peel one end off of the backing. And I always like to start in the middle, because you don't want to stretch the tape all the way along. So it's good to start in the middle and work out. Like so. So that's one side stuck down, and I shall do the other one and return. And fold them over again as before, like so, and top stitch. And do both sides. Okay, so we've now left with this, and at this point is when we get our connectors, and we add our connectors on, making sure that they're facing outwards at this end, and you want to make sure that this bar is on the inside of the strap, and then add the other one at the other end facing away from it. So that they're like that basically, because when you're going to put the strap on, you're going to put it on like so. And then what we need to do is just use a clip to keep them together at the right point. And now we want to join these together at this end. So where we've got the strap like this, we turn them over like that. and if I clip, and then what you can do once you've clipped is just check that it's going to look right before you stitch it, and it is. And I'm just going to mark again as before. And then stitch as before. And we just need to trim the seam allowance again. And then get some more double-sided tape. Peel the backing off. And then fold into the centre. And that's that. Once we've joined the ends together, put these on, join the ends together, before we put these parts together, which is what I just did, we need to top stitch all the way around on the edges. Stitch both sides. So we've top stitched all the way around both sides, and now we want to line these up perfectly so that you've got the same amount of the other side showing on each end. And I'll just put a clip each side whilst we do the next bit, just to keep them in place. And we just want to put some double-sided tape along the middle. And peel the backing off. Oh, if it'll allow you. That's it. And then carefully, very carefully, place the two sides together and make sure that they're equally on top of each other, so that the sides aren't one side or the other. You don't want either side overhanging to be seen from the opposite side. It's very important to have them exactly together. Okay, and if you're not happy with where you laid it down, pull it up and redo it. That's it. So I'm happy with how they're together, and now what we need to do is basically stitch a rectangular box to place them together. If you want to try and follow your previous stitch line, you can, but if you go off a little bit, it will be very obvious. So I purposely choose to stitch in from that so that it's got a double line of stitching. And there we have the double line of stitching with the rectangles at the end, and just for prettiness I will put a rivet at each end, and that is our handle ready for attaching, like so. I'm going to do the other handle, and so that they're both ready. So I've stitched both handles, and what I did was marked 3/4 of an inch down from this edge and marked a dot, and then used my rivet punch to put a hole. And then we just want to put the rivets on. I've got the dropsies today. And make sure it's lined up properly on my green machine. And voila. And we'll do the same with all 4. And then we're going to mark the holes. I'm not going to add the handles to the bag because they get in the way for making the bag. So I will mark the holes. Let's make sure that was on properly then. I will mark the holes, make the holes, and then we'll add the handles towards the end before we close the bag up. You know, I add them that late. It's just better to add them so much later in the game. And I'm using 9mm rivets, 9mm across diameter, the head, and 8mm posts. They don't need to be the bigger posts because it's quite thin. So that's the rivets all put on the handles. So the handles are ready to go. And what we do now is we get our pattern piece again, and although I'm not adding the handles that they show to add, I use the placement for where I want to add the connectors. Like so. I mean, it's pretty much the same shape. So all I want to do, and I've just realised I'm marking it in blue, but I could do with marking it in the white pen. I think that's going to stand out a bit more. There. And it takes several seconds for the white to appear. As it dries, it appears. Just going over the lines. Right, so all I've done is mark, I don't know if you'll see them or not, is mark the lines. And there's the piece I had earlier that I was leaving for this to dry, which it has. And again, mark the placements for and what I do now is getting my screwdriver, is remove the screws and I'm going to use the washer to mark the holes that I'm going to need. And the prongs on this particular connector are quite wide, quite big, so I need to punch quite big holes. If you can see there, they are quite large. So I get my washer and I place it along the line I've just drawn in the center, and we'll try it in the blue to see. So I mark the holes, and yeah, they're standing out. Now I get my punch and I'm need to see. Yeah, I think that's the widest one I've got, maybe. Yeah, I'm using my biggest punch. Which has got some bits in it. It's got quite a big hole. So I'm going to, the reason why I punch the holes now, it's just easier than trying to do it later on when the bag is virtually together, and then you've got to fiddle about doing it through the lining and so on and so forth. Whereas this will be much easier to do this now and have it ready just to literally screw them on, which you'll see. So I'm now going to use the punch to place the holes. I'm not very strong with my hands because of my arthritis, so it can be a bit difficult to, even with the screw punch. I mean, this is the only thing I can use. I can't use any other. But this does work well for me. Even if it is a bit of a struggle, but that's because I just don't have the strength in my hands. My husband usually does it for me, but for the purpose of showing you, I'm doing it. But I'll get in to do the rest because that's wore me out. Now I'll show you exactly what I mean, and that's them coming through. So I'm not going to add them, as I said, and so that these holes don't fray, I shall put some fray check on the holes to stop the material fraying. I shall get my husband to do the rest for me, and then we'll come back with the next section. Now we have section 4, which is the slip pocket. The instructions say to use 2 pieces of fabric 8 inches across, 7 inches down, but I don't want to do that. I prefer to use 1 piece of fabric because I don't like having the seam along the top edge of the pocket. So if you prefer to do it their way, that's fine, but I've done 8 inches down, across, 14 inches down. If you're using directional fabric, you need to do that. And then what I do is bring the 2 short edges to each other, and then we're just going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around the edge, in towards the middle, have a couple of inch gap, and round again to the end. Always back stitch on the corners. Just gives the corners that extra bit of strength when you're turning and pushing the corners out. So we've stitched around the pocket, and we're just going to trim the corners to reduce the bulk, and always reduce the top edge as well, because that will be a corner. so, and then we turn the right side out. Just going to turn my iron on, ready to press, and we push all the corners out. So we really want nice crisp corners, and you see, if you double stitch, you're less likely to push a hole through the lining when you're pushing the corner out. I mean, it can still happen if you're not careful, but it's just that gives it a bit more of a bit stronger corner. I'm just looking for my pusher. It's actually a tracer pen by Clover. When I use carbon paper when dressmaking, and this, you have the carbon paper on your material, you have the pattern piece, and you can draw with this. You can do it the same with bag patterns if you want to, but it generally works better because of the tracing paper, etc. But yeah, so that's what that is. Anyway, I use it to push corners out. Okay, so they're nicely pushed out. I'll get my ironing pad. And see, at the top there, you haven't got that seam, which I don't think is very attractive in the top of a pocket. I mean, that's me personally. You may think differently. You want to make sure that your seams are really pushed out here. So what I do is I just flatten the seam out, and then it just folds better to be out. I'll show you on the other side actually. Okay, so I just press that there and fold that there. Now, if you look here along this edge where I pressed it flat to start with, it's nice and crisp, the seams are flat. But if you look here, I didn't, and the seams aren't completely flat. Look, see, they're not fully out. And that's why I press the seams, and it's worth doing. Just adds to the finish. And then I just want to press the seam in. Everything's a bit hot. And just cut the little threads that are poking out. Yeah, I'm happy with that seam. So now we've pressed that, we need to add it to our lining. So we get our lining piece and we need to centre this. Oh no, I beg your pardon. We need to top stitch along there first. So I've top stitched and nearly forgot that, but there you go. And you're going to line it up with the bottom edge, and then I just want to line up along here, measure along here, and that is 13.5. So I need to just measure this. which is just under 7.5, so 3 inches each side really, more or less. Just a smidgen to that side. So I'm happy with where that is. Just get my hedgehog and pin. And once I've pinned it, I'm still going to check the measurements. I want to make sure it's exactly right. So from this bottom edge, just over 4. And from this edge, just over 3. Yeah, so I'm happy with that. It's all central. And now we're going to stitch down and around. Okay, I triple stitched each top to make sure that it didn't have, you know, the stress that you put into a pocket when you're putting your hands in and out can cause some strain, and the pull could actually pull on the pocket and pull it the seam apart. So by triple stitching, it really anchors it down firmly. So that's the slip pocket added, and I want to add my label at this point. So because I'll be sewing this, I get my oh goodness, double-sided tape that's sewable. And take the backing off. And I just fold this in half temporarily. And I just want to get the centre of the pocket. So it's 7 1/4, so it's just over the 3 1/2 mark. Like so. I'm just going to take it to the machine to stitch both sides. Now we're on section 5, bottom panels, and what we have to do is we get the exterior panel that's not got the pocket attached, so this is blank, and we attach our exterior bottom panel, and we're going to stitch across there with 1/2 inch seam allowance, but we have to stop each end 1/2 inch each end. So what I do is I just mark to remind me of where to stop. I have drawn a centre line on my panel at the bottom, and then a centre line on here and line them up. So a 1/2 inch seam allowance, half an inch in either end. So there we've stitched it, and now we need to get the lining main panel with pocket this time, and mark halfway along the centre to the centre point, and do the same with your lining bottom panel. And we're going to do exactly the same as before. We're going to stitch with half an inch seam allowance, and we're going to stop and start half an inch in. So that part's done as well, and now it's time to do the zipper tabs. Attach them to your zip. So you want a zip that's 12 inches long. Not sure what I've done. Okay. So this is 12 inches long, and we're not going to be doing it their way by tucking it into the sides. I use a continuous zip, and when you do a continuous zip, you don't have the stopper on the end like you do with the normal zip. And by doing so, if you open this out and tuck it in each side, it's never going to be a proper zip. And with my last bag, I had to buy a metal stopper and put that in. So you do need to make the zipper tabs. If you're using a regular zip that you've bought and it has the stopper on the end, if you want to do it by tucking in each way, by all means do. However, I don't really like the look of this. If you don't have the zipper tabs, you see you've got this gap. You've got it both ends, and I think it's very untidy. I'm not selling this bag. I'm giving it to my daughter because I don't think it's a good enough finish just because of this. That's the only reason. Otherwise the bag's perfect, but this has really put me off, and I just don't feel I could sell it with my name. So I just completely forgot, because it's been a while since I made a Lola, and I completely forgot I had the zipper tabs. So that was my mistake. And that's the stopper that I had to buy and put on it. Otherwise it was just opening up. So I'm going to add the zipper tabs and show you how to do it. And these are 3 inch long, 2 inch wide. And I'm just going to start with folding it in half, wrong sides together, pressing it, and then open it up and take the raw edges into the middle and press it. And then fold in half and press. And that's your zipper tab made for one end. Like, oh, it's so hot. Oh, like so. And I will take it to the machine and just stitch across the width of the zip no further, because that's going to be cut off. And I shall do the same both ends. Okay, so that's the zipper tabs attached, and that measures start to finish 12 inches. So now we get the main panel with the zipper pocket, and we're going to be placing the zip face down onto the right side, the top side. So I'm going to get my trusty double-sided tape, and I mean, you can use pins, especially if you haven't used vinyl. Obviously, if you've used vinyl, you'll need to use clips or double-sided tape. So, peel the backing off. Now, you need to get this central as well. I think if I line that up, so that's 16.5, and so we just, I'm eyeballing it. You may want to actually measure. And I'm following it around the curve of the bag. I'm going to check it before I stitch it, because with double-sided tape you can pull off and relay it. And that looks good to me. Just need to lay this back on the edge. Wasn't quite perfectly along the edge. There. And then we stitch along at 1/4 inch seam allowance. So there it is stitched. I should have said, if you're using a zip with the stopper at the end, then you are folding the tape upwards out of the way, both ends. If you're using the zipper tabs, you stitch them in. And now we need to add the lining piece without the pocket to the zip. So the zip will be sandwiched in between the two layers. So you've got the main piece with the pocket and the lining piece without the pocket, and the zips face down with the zipper pull up the left side. Now we're going to add the lining piece face down. I'm just going to turn this upside down to add the double-sided tape. Pull the backing off, like so, and really make sure you're lining the panel up equally. Like so. And then we're going to stitch at 1/4 inch seam allowance, stopping and starting 1/2 inch before the end, so these won't be sewn together. So that's the lining stitched, and we open that up, and I'm going to press both these seams, and then we're going to repeat the other way. So I should press these seams first before we continue. I've given the sides a press so they're nice and flat. And now we're going to add the other external piece that's got the bottom attached. So what I will do is put some double-sided tape along the edge. Not quite to the ends because this part doesn't go all the way to the ends, and then I'm going to lay this on top, and I'm checking to make sure these parts are lined up equally before I press the zip down. I just want to make sure everything's in place where I want it to be, and that I'm happy with where it's going to go. And I just check, and you've got the equal space either end. And now we're going to do as before and sandwich the pieces between the zip between the external and the lining. And this time we go all the way along with the double-sided tape. And then this lining piece is also face down. Like so. So we've sandwiched them in between, and we're going to stitch along that edge. So we're going to start 1/2 inch in from the edge where the zipper tab starts, and we're stitching at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just going to move the zip along so I don't try stitching on that. And we stop at the zipper tab as well. So we've sewn along the edge, stopped and started at the ends, 1/2 inch in, and then open it up and I'm just going to press along here like we did with the other side. So you're pressing the fabric away from the zip, and we've got to do the same with the lining. So you've ended up with this with the lining piece, and then turning it over you've got this with the exterior. And now we want to sew the other side of the exterior main panel to the bottom of the exterior. And as before, we start stitching 1/2 inch in from the end and stop 1/2 inch towards the other end, and we're stitching at 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I will clip these. And what I do is I line up the panels so they're matching the opposite side, so that I know it's all going to match nice and evenly and nothing's going to be twisted. And the notches that we've already made in the panel actually help us with where we're going to start stitching. And again, it can guide us for where we're going to stop stitching. And as we did with the exterior, we're now going to do the same and stitch the lining pieces, the other lining piece to the interior bottom piece. Half an inch in from the edge and half an inch seam allowance. Oh, I've just realised I'm pushing the camera, sorry. Just stitch the exterior together, and now we're going to stitch the lining to the remaining side of the bottom panel, but we want to leave a gap, so I'm only going to stitch, starting half an inch in as before with half an inch seam allowance. I'm only going to stitch an inch. And then go along to the end and stitch the last inch, stopping half an inch before the end. So you're sort of starting an inch and a half before the end, half an inch seam allowance, you may not have seen that due to this, but that's so that we've got the bag, the gap for turning the bag. So I've left the gap, and now I've pinned all the way along the edges. I've put the lining sides together and the exterior right sides together, pinned along the edge, and we're going to stitch using a half an inch seam allowance all the way, and to stop at the stitching at the top, and so on. And we're going to do both sides. And as you can see, I have used pins, which I don't often use, but for this case, to stop everything sliding around, I have used pins. Just being a bit stubborn. And as you can see, I'm sewing from one side to the middle and then the other end to the middle. Okay, as I got near to the top, I couldn't quite sew this last bit there because this was stopping it. So I've changed my foot to a zipper foot. So if you have the same problem, that's what you need to do. It just allows you to sew that last area. And I had the problem on all of the sides, although some more than others. Can be a bit of a fight and a bit fiddly, but you'll get there. I actually more or less did this side actually, so this was a lot easier to do. So we've stitched down the sides, and now, well, I will say actually what I did do was I just had a peek in there to make sure I was happy with how it looked. Now at this point you can stitch the seam allowance, cut the seam allowance if you want to. I'm not going to. At this moment in time, and what we want to do now is to box the ends off. So we push them down like so, and this is why we've only stitched so far, because we need to be able to have the bag go like that. And you will notice that there is a curve to this, so make sure that as you stitch, you'll stitch the curve rather than straight across. And we're going to do both ends. And I am opening up the seams. sorry, I'm not sure if you've got much of that in because of the angle of the camera. But we've boxed both edges off and we're going to stitch at 1/2 inch seam allowance. I didn't show the stitching of this because of the angle of the bag. It was in front of the camera. You wouldn't have seen anything. But you'll see that we've stitched the corners and the stitching has met from where we stitched before. And now we want to do the lining part as well. The same way as before. We'll pin like that and stitch the curves, both sides. So I've stitched everywhere apart from obviously this gap for the lining. And now I'm going to just trim off some of the seam allowance. I don't want to trim off too much, to be honest with you. And that's about it. I'm going to leave the lining as it is for the minute. I can always come back to it if I want to. And before I go anywhere else now, I'm going to attach the handles, which you're probably going to think I'm doing it in a very strange way. But I didn't want the handles being in the way for when I was sewing. So this is my way of putting the handles on. Obviously, if you did the handles without the connectors, you will have added them earlier. And in case I can't remember because I've left this alone for a week, so I can't remember if when I did the filming if I mentioned about adding them at the time. So if I hadn't, then I've added a note to you to say to do it. I just can't remember, to be honest with you. Because although the videos are only 2 or 3 hours long, due to my health, it can take me several weeks to film a video, and again, quite a long time to edit. So it can take me 4, 5, even 6 weeks to do a sew along. So I've taken the screws and the backs off, and now I'm going to put the connector inside, and I'm doing it by feel. I'm going to do it by sight as well, actually. That's it. And you just make sure that the prongs come through the holes you've made earlier. Like so. I'm not sure if you'll see that or not, but I don't want to lift it up because it will lose the place. So I'm going to put the washers on. And then put the first screw on. I'll show you in a moment when I have put the screws in. And never tighten them fully. Don't ever put the first screw in all the way, because you can shift the whole lot. So once you've got them all in, then you tighten up. Like so. And because I can't tighten as tight as I should be able to, I'll get my husband to tighten them up for me. But we do all four like that. Then I'm going to come back to you once I've done that. So I've attached the handles, and the one thing I have realised I forgot to do was to mark up for the feet. So I am sorry about that. What a silly thing to do. Anyway, I'm going to turn the bag the right side out, and then I'm going to install the Pearl-Tex and the foam and the feet, which might sound a bit strange, but that's how I'm going to do it. So we need to birth the bag, which I'm not going to be able to do. It's going to be too hard for me with my hands, so I'm going to have to go and ask my husband to do it. I shall return when it's done. So here's the bag turned the right way out. She's not fully finished yet. I've left the gap inside for the lining because we need to add the foam and the Pearl-Tex, which I honestly do at this late stage. The only thing I've forgotten to do is mark the feet. The reason why I do it at such a late stage is because the feet will hold these in place, and these don't bulk out the seams for sewing. It just becomes a bit of a nightmare, to be honest with you. Now, this is my preferred way of doing it. If you prefer to add it earlier, by all means do. But this is what works for me. I should have marked the feet placements earlier though, so that I have messed up with. So I think I'll have put a note on the video to say, mark the placement for your feet. So, it's no big drama though. What I'm going to do is measure the width. Which is just under 6 inches. And I'm going to mark right, I've marked 1.5 inches in. This is my choice, so you may choose to place your feet elsewhere. But I've measured 1.5 inches in from the centre edge up, and 1.5 inches in from that edge. See, 1.5 inches. And 1.5 inches from that edge, not this edge, but there, because it curves out. I'm going to do the same this end, exactly the same measurements. It's a bit fiddly. Okay. And same again. I'm hoping these will come out at the right measurements. I shall check in a minute. So I want to check that they're straight and that they're even. Yeah. And then I want to mark, I have always put a foot in the middle. So I want to mark a centre dot . and check the across this way as well. Yep. Okay, so I've marked for my feet. I'm happy with the placement. And I've had my feet out for days in my box, and I've been thinking, what are these for? Which bag are these for? Because I've got a few on the go. And it was for this one. And I stupidly put it away in my box, and I should have left them out on the table, which would have reminded me. Okay, so now we want to put the foam and the Peltex. I'm doing both. You might just do Peltex, you might just do foam. You put whatever you like in to your bag, and I'm going to place them both in. And in all honesty, I normally glue them together, but it's not essential. And I'm not this time. And they because you've cut them down, they're made to fit out inside the seams as such, which I can feel they do. They're actually a really nice fit. They fit into the corners. Yeah, they're a very nice fit. And now we mark holes very carefully. I haven't got my fingers anywhere near this point. They're either side. And I go very slowly. And before it shifts, put the foot in. If you don't do it straight away, then the foam and the Peltex could shift, and then you're forever hunting the hole. Slowly but surely going through. And you do it, I do it all blindly by feel. Okay, so gone through now, and now I stand over the bag and I look inside at the foot prongs, and add the washer. I know you're probably thinking, what a half-assed way of doing things, but I just find it's better to add all this after. You might not be adding feet, which is fine. I'm not over keen on these washers though, I must admit. They're a bit weird. I'm doing this so I can show you. Right, so there's the foot inside with the washer. So that's one foot installed, and we'll do the rest and I shall come back when they're done. I have managed to put the feet on, yeah, at last. So yeah, I mean, that's how I do it. I add them at this stage. I just forgot to mark for them. I don't know if I can get you to see in there, but the foam and the Peltex is fixed in place. Everything's fine. So now what we need to do is close the lining, and I'm just going to tidy up the opening where they've just frayed a little bit through the turning. And what I will do is press the seam turn my ironing on, is fold the seam over for the seam allowance, which is 1/2 inch, and press it both sides, and then use some tape, a double-sided tape, to keep it closed whilst you sew it. And I do use the tape because it just keeps it neat and closed evenly, and it stops it from slipping, so you don't have a wonky seam. So we just fold it over like so, and then press it down, and then I get my tape and I put it quite close to the edge of the seam fold, because if you do it quite in, it's hard to explain. If you do it quite far in, then it's going to look like that, if I'm explaining it correctly. Anyway, trust me, put it close to the edge. Oh dear. Sometimes I get it in my head, but I just can't get it out. Got it. Oh. Okay, and then carefully make sure that the seam's going together where the edges are nice and neat. Like so, so that they're evenly placed, and then take it to the machine and stitch it. I've sewn along the edge, and we push her into all the corners, tuck the lining in neatly, and there's your lining installed. I don't know if you can see that at all. I put a light on it. There's the lining, nice, it fits nicely. That's your bag made. There's my Lola. There is one thing you can do, and that's top stitch, if you want to. It depends on what your bag's like. Mine's nice and flat there. I'm going to leave it. You don't always need to top stitch. The lining's in nicely. It's not bulging up, so there's no need to top stitch. I don't like top stitching very often. So if I can leave it, I will. If you've used vinyl, you probably will need to top stitch. So just decide for yourself whether you want to top stitch, whether you need to top stitch. I'm leaving it as it is. That's my bag finished. Please do post your bags in the group. It's my reward for doing the sew alongs, is to see your bags in my sew along group. So I look forward to seeing them. Ask any questions in the group that you need to ask. I'm always happy to help. Happy stitching, everyone, and I shall see you next time.